You're with Julian on the Brown Note, Israel versus Palestine, and why the war in Gaza has already failed. Despite epoch-defining levels of horror, it hasn't really shifted the dial, I don't think, and has no possibility of doing so. We all know what's going on. Our Western governments have been as slow in condemning Israel for what's happening, which many call genocide, ethnic cleansing, and every name possible for the unbelievable, absolutely destructive disgrace that's happening on the ground in Gaza and in the West Bank as well now. And of course, I've posted on this subject many times, and how the release of hostages is garbage, because no one wants the hostages released less than Benjamin Netanyahu. They just have to go back to doing the slow motion war, which they don't really seem to want to do. For the unspoken success of the war, which is the real success of the war, two things need to happen. The absorption of the West Bank and Gaza Strip into a greater Israel. Now, that's entirely possible, and they could have done it at any point. But the other part is the removal of the Palestinians, which is not possible. And that is the killing blow to the war. It's the fact that they can't remove the people from Gaza and the West Bank. I've posted another piece on this. It's the great unspoken lie about this whole conflict. They've got about 2 to 3 million people in Israel that are either Palestinian or Arab or non-Jewish, and about 7 million that are Jewish. There's another 2 million plus Palestinians in Gaza and another 2 million plus in the West Bank. So if they just take those regions with the people in, they'll have a comparably equal population of Palestinians and Jews in Israel. So they would have to completely reshape the entire country. The possibility of any fake democracy, which is kind of what they do at the moment, is out the window, because what are they going to do? Never have a Jewish elected government again? They wouldn't countenance that. So they have to remove the people, which is absolutely impossible. And it never happened in the modern era in any similar situation. But it's also failing on its two stated aims. I mean, the lies about removing Hamas, like if you read the Times of Israel on October 8th, 2023, they excoriate Benjamin Netanyahu for his support in fomenting Hamas. And we've just seen this week that Netanyahu has admitted to fomenting another militant Palestinian group to attack Hamas. So in the initial years back phase, he wanted to weaken the Palestinian Authority by supporting Hamas, who opposed them, so that it would split any future viable Palestinian state. And he's doing it again. He's doing it with another militant group who was stealing aid and doing all this other stuff. So Hamas, with between 50 and 120,000 dead, the majority being women and children, I would say that Hamas has a lot of future fighters waiting, lining up to join them. But also, every time they deal with any talk of a ceasefire, they're dealing with Hamas. Their stated aim was to remove Hamas, but yet they're dealing with Hamas more than anyone else. And the other is a lie about returning hostages. Like Netanyahu's entire political lifeline, given he's up to his neck in multiple corruption charges, is the war continuing. He's the last person that wants these hostages released. It's like the only claim that he has. I think, ironically, Trump might have helped in a way, in that he might have emboldened them too far. You've got all this talk about, wiping out the Gaza Strip and turning it into the Riviera of the Middle East. I think he might have emboldened them a little bit too far, but there's the other side. The West has always wanted a polite genocide, so that it happens slowly, and the whole conflict has gone from slow genocide or ethnic cleansing with the settlements in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, to higher and then down again, and higher and then down again. And that's been the pattern at least 30 years now. But what they're encouraging Western nations, the cowardly Western nations, to do is to actually recognise Palestinian statehood. And you've had a lot of European nations now, even Britain, pushing for this. So they might end up with not quite the victory that they wanted here. And the rate that they're killing people, they might have killed 120,000 people over the last year and a half. At their most violent, there's still probably 2 million people left. There's no way that they can effectively destroy this population. There was this pie in the sky idea that they're all going to be forced out into Egypt and other places, but that's never going to happen. And there are millions of Palestinian refugees in other places already. They can't execute the 4.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and they can't march them out. The last time I remember that happening, outside something like Rwanda, the genocide in Rwanda, which was door to door, was like the Armenian genocide, where the Turks marched 1.5 million Armenians out of the country. They can't do that. That's just never going to work in the modern era. The current process would take decades and has done not much in decades. And Netanyahu needs a war for political survival, but to what end? They'll likely end up with more land that they've taken and not much else. I mean, not much else on the Palestinian side is absolute disaster and horror. But then we just go back to the slow motion of this conflict, which has always existed and bubbles up. Yet Netanyahu's trapped. He's got nowhere to go. There was so few Israelis support him that they're massively against Netanyahu in Israel. And even though a lot of Israelis actually support the notion of taking the West Bank and Gaza Strip, they've never liked Netanyahu anyway. They always have to form coalition governments. Unfortunately, this makes Netanyahu particularly dangerous now because his go-to on this issue has always been to try and start a war with Iran. And the idea being that will drag the West in on Israel's side. And there are plenty of conservative neo-hawks in America that have always wanted payback for what happened at the end of the 1970s in Iran. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any appetite for a full-scale war with Iran at all in America. Even amongst these neoconservative hawks that have always pushed for it, there doesn't seem to be the appetite for that. So he doesn't have anywhere to go. And the idea that they'd leave of their own accord because you'll treat them so bad, they haven't done so far. It's been going on for 50 years. They've been treated terrible for 50 years. They haven't left. They don't have anywhere else to go. No one wants to take them because it's a Rubicon for the Arab nations to accept the expulsion of the Palestinian people from the West Bank and Gaza Strip. It's a line they won't cross. And they still won't. And Jewish voices at home and abroad that oppose Netanyahu are only growing louder. The media tries not to comment on them because it's an unfortunate thing. I mean, what do you do in America where you're locking up everyone that's pro the Palestinian cause when they're Jewish? You can't do it because it's an uncomfortable fact of what's going on. But Israel's standing just grows lower and lower. And Israel has its own internal problems. They've had cost of living crisis before the West did. The economy in the country is terrible. And he's deeply unpopular. There was a poll saying that only 15% of Israelis wanted Netanyahu to stay on after the war. So they'll get a little bit more land and a lot more opposition overseas. And you've got people like the International Criminal Court, the ICC and the United Nations regularly excoriating Israel to the extent where America's trying to denude both organisations. So we'll go back to the slow-mo war against, this absolutely devastated population. But overall, for maximum bloodshed, little has actually been achieved.